Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for what is a totally essential software engineering lecture. Today, we're unpacking a really critical topic from Chapter 23 of your textbook, Project Planning and Software Pricing. Now let's dive right into this because understanding how to plan and price a software project is literally just as important as knowing how to write the code itself. We're going to be looking at all of this from a strictly professional, industry-standard perspective.
Here is what we're looking at today. We'll kick things off with an intro to project planning, look at the 3 parameters of cost, understand overhead costs, break down the factors affecting software pricing, explore the pricing to win strategy, and then finish up with a comprehensive summary.
All right, let's jump right into Part 1, Intro to Project Planning.
So you might be wondering, why is project planning so incredibly vital? Well, in professional software development, planning isn't something you just do once and then completely forget about. It's a continuous, super dynamic process. There are really 3 distinct chronological stages here. First up is the proposal stage. This is when you're actually bidding for a contract. Your estimates here? Highly speculative, mostly because you just don't have a complete set of requirements yet. You're really just trying to secure the job. Second is the project startup phase. Okay, so now you've won the contract, and you have to refine your plan with the actual staff and resources you have available. You start breaking down the real work. And finally, planning happens periodically during development. As the project rolls on, you learn way more about the system, software requirements adapt, and you absolutely must update your plan to reflect that new reality.
Just to lock this in before we move on, here's a quick micro recap. Planning is not a one-off event. It happens before bidding, it refines its startup, and it adapts continuously as requirements inevitably change. Moving on to Section 2, the 3 parameters of cost.
Now that we know exactly when we plan, we've got to calculate our baseline costs before we even think about quoting a final price. When we compute the costs of a software project, notice how that first slice, effort costs, is by far the biggest piece of the pie. This represents paying your actual software engineers and managers. The other 2 slices represent your hardware and software costs and your travel and training costs. Let's break down what each of these entails, right? Effort costs don't just cover basic salaries, you've got to add contingency buffers, basically extra time and effort just in case your initial estimates were a bit too optimistic. Next, hardware and software costs. While a lot of commercial projects use relatively cheap off-the-shelf hardware, your costs can absolutely spike if you have to buy expensive middleware or platform software licenses. Finally, travel and training. If a project is spread across different sites, travel can rack up a massive bill. So to really minimize unnecessary expenditures, savvy managers use electronic meetings and collaborative software to reduce travel time, which keeps the engineers focused on actual productive work.
Time for another quick micro recap. Your basic mathematical formula for baseline project cost is total cost equals effort, which, remember, is your biggest parameter, plus hardware and software, plus travel and training.
All right, Section 3, Understanding Overhead Costs.
Now pay close attention because this is an area where students frequently make calculation mistakes on their exams. Let's define this super clearly. Overhead refers to the ongoing organizational expenses that must be added to a developer's base salary to calculate their true cost to the company. A really common misconception is just multiplying a developer's hourly wage by the hours worked. But think about it. In the real world, if a company only charges the client exactly what they pay the developer, that company will literally go bankrupt.
What's fascinating is exactly what overhead includes. Honestly, it's the cost of literally keeping the lights on in the building. We're talking office space rent, heating and lighting, paying your administration and support staff, and maintaining the entire networking infrastructure. You have to compute all these organizational overheads and add a proportion of them to the cost of every single engineer working on the project just to find their true hourly rate.
So here is our golden rule micro recap for this section. Never, ever just multiply a developer's salary by their time. You absolutely must always add those overhead costs to find the true total project expense. Which brings us to Section 4, Factors Affecting Software Pricing.
Okay, we need to bust a massive myth right now. Calculating costs is really only the first half of the equation. Setting the final price is actually a highly strategic business decision. The myth is that price simply equals cost plus profit. Nope. The business reality is that software pricing is highly strategic, economical, and honestly, sometimes even political. You've got to look at broader organizational concerns and risks long before you quote a final number to a customer.
So let's look at the 5 major factors that affect pricing, derived straight from figure 23.1 in your textbook. Number 1, contractual terms. Say a customer lets you retain ownership of the source code so you can reuse it later. Well, you might lower the price for them. Number 2, cost estimate uncertainty. If you genuinely aren't sure how hard the job is going to be, you increase the price by adding a contingency buffer. Number 3, financial health. If a company is really struggling, they might bid incredibly low just to maintain cash flow and keep the doors open. Number 4, market opportunity. A company might deliberately take a massive financial loss on a project just to break into a lucrative new market segment. And number 5, requirements volatility. If the requirements are super vague, a company might bid low just to win the contract, fully knowing they'll make huge profits charging for all those changes later on.
Let's ground this in a real-world example from the text, the PharmaSoft case study. So PharmaSoft estimates a project will cost them $1.2 million to build. However, they turn around and bid a price of just $0.8 million to the customer. Why on earth would they take a loss like that? It comes down to the financial health and market opportunity factors. By winning this contract at a loss, PharmaSoft gets to retain their highly specialized development staff. They're keeping the team together for much more profitable future contracts that they know are coming down the line. It's totally strategic corporate behavior.
Next up, Section 5, Strategy Pricing to Win.
Alert! Pay close attention because this next strategy is a high-yield topic that frequently shows up in tests and exams. Let's define it. Pricing to win means a company guesses the exact price the customer expects to pay, and they bid that exact amount, regardless of what the initial requirements might actually cost to build. Then, once they've secured the contract, they aggressively negotiate the detailed requirements down so the project actually fits within that fixed budget. I know it sounds a bit controversial, but it is a very standard, highly effective business negotiation tactic.
Let's see how this plays out step by step with the OilSoft case study. Step 1. OilSoft is bidding to build a fuel delivery system. There's no detailed specification yet, but they guess the client's budget is around $900,000. Step 2. OilSoft bids exactly $900,000 and they win the trust and the contract. Step 3. Now the real work begins. OilSoft sits down with the client and aggressively negotiates the requirements down to ensure only the most basic, core functionality is delivered for that $900,000, making absolutely sure they don't lose money. Any extra features? Well, those will cost the client a lot more later.
So the crucial point you need to remember for pricing to win is this micro recap. It fixes the budget in place, but makes the software requirements highly flexible. It absolutely proves that software pricing is fundamentally a business negotiation, not just a simple mathematical calculation.
And finally, Section 6, Summary and Next Steps.
Okay, we have covered some truly fantastic core concepts today. Here is your ultimate cheat sheet to lock in the most important exam facts. Remember, project planning happens at the proposal stage, during startup, and continuously throughout development. The total cost equals effort plus hardware plus travel. When calculating effort, you must always add overheads to those basic salaries. And finally, price is not just cost plus profit. It's influenced by 5 strategic market factors, and tactics like pricing to win mean fixing the budget early and aggressively negotiating the requirements later.
So, you've totally mastered the business reality of software pricing. But now that we understand the strategic realities of project planning and pricing, how do we actually structure the day-to-day development process? Well, that brings us to our next topic in the program, plan-driven development. I'll see you in the next explainer to dive into exactly how that works.